Right. The Voodoo Afterlife as a Matter of Choice, Chapter 7. In the African Haitian religious system, like in any other religion of the world, the post mortem status of an individual is a matter of choice within the boundary imparted to our space time dimension. The afterlife realm is also a many splendid thing within the limits established by the super determinism of the immanent dimension. The post-mortem reality of every believer is greatly determined by individual choice. The post-mortem realm as another presentation of space-time continuum exists also as a superposition of possibilities, probabilities, and potentialities. Like the Hugh Everett parallel universes, it has many branches. The branch or model in which an individual soul indwells after death is greatly determined by the believer or adept's choice. Quantum physics has taught us that the objectivity of our world can be determined by our subjectivity, and nowhere else beside the afterlife dimension is that principle more dominant. The postmortem realm is more on the side of the wave function that on our material than on our material empirical reality, and is more readily molded by the mental construct of the adept. The subjectivity of the believer determines the appearance or the makeup of his post-mortem abode. There exist many models of post-mortem habitats, as exemplified by by the paradises and hells of the monotheistic religions. Judaism, in its Talmudic interpretation, has opted for a Gehenna, a purgatory place of purification, where the souls enter in preparation for acceptance in Gan Eden and Elysium, Elysium, where the blameless enjoy the splendor of the Shekinah or divine presence. This is their choice within the superposition of possibilities or potentialities. Their faith actualizes the physicality of their post mortem choice of abode. That's interesting. So it's not that heaven and hell don't actually exist, even within um, whatever religious system that you subscribe to, is that it actually does. And it's rather a matter of choice as to whether you subscribe to such a model of reality or not. Very interesting. Um, their faith actualizes the physicality of their postmortem choice of abode. The Catholic branch of Christianity has actualized an eternal hell, a purgatory, and a paradise. The Protestant branch has created an eternal paradise. So wait, the Catholics, what the Catholics do? An eternal hell, a purgatory, and a paradise. The Protestants created an eternal paradise and an eternal hell. Islam, likewise, has brought into existence a paradise and its hellish counterpart. However, the outlays of those parallel post-mortem realms are very complex and confusing at times. In the Old Testament, the Sheol, or Hades, was at first a shadowy place where everybody goes at death, a depressing place without interesting activity. Later on, it evolved into two counterparts: Abraham's bosom or paradise, and Gehenna, a place of torture or hell. In ancient Greece in Homer's time, Hades was a subterranean abode for a conscious but dreamlike existence. It was such a boring place that the Greeks imagined that a life of beggar in the land of the living was better than the life of a king in that netherworld. Later on, their subjectivity created another realm, or parallel branch for the great ones, the heroes, who are transported to Elysium, or the Isles of the Best. This branching of the alternate reality was located at the ends of the earth, beyond the river Oceanus, that encircled the earth. The location of Elysium was changed later to that subterranean world. Besides, that exception for the heroes, the lot of common men and women, was that of a shadowy existence, where there is no judgment, punishment, or reward. The power of subjectivity to mold the objective reality is enunciated as a law of the spiritual world by the founder of Christianity. Jesus of Nazareth repeatedly emphasized the creative power of faith. Matthew 9:29 reads, "Let it be done to you according to your faith." Matthew 8:13 reads, "As you believed, so let it be done for you." Matthew 9:22 reads, "Your faith has made you well." Hesitation, doubt, doubt that comes from a logical three-dimensional reasoning weakens the power of faith's quantum process. Walking on the water to meet the Master, Peter was stricken by fear when he saw the fury of the winds and he began to sink. "Oh, you of little faith, why did you doubt?" Matthew 14, verse 31. On commenting on the withered fig tree, the Master said in Matthew 21:21, "If you have faith, you say to this mountain, 'Be removed and be cast into the sea,' it will be done. And all things, whatever you ask in prayer, believing, you will receive." Let me take that again. If you have faith, you say to this mountain, "Be removed and be cast into the sea," it will be done. And all things, whatever you eh, and all things, whatever you ask in prayer, believing, you will receive. This is the law or principle on which rests the power of subjectivity or mental construct to mold reality in the material world as well as in the shadow world. The wave function nature of the spiritual world and its superposition of potentialities or possibility or probabilities corresponds to the metamorphosis of the New Testament. In my Father's house there are many mansions, John 14, verse 2. It is a fact of life or existence that every species in biology, every race in the human species, every nation, clan or tribe, institution, religion, philosophy, or ideology will branch out into multiple parallel variants that are like parallel universes. In the post-mortem vision of the religious world, the afterlife abode exists as parallel universes. They exist within the boundary established by the immanent dimension. The problem is that in all likelihood, those believers will be stuck with the reality they have created unless the fiat of the Supreme Being transforms their realities into something of his own choice or liking. Furthermore, all of those post mortem abodes are expressions of space time and are subjected to decay, either linear or dynamical. All will end in uniformity of non individuality after a variable amount of time if they don't cross an ambiguity barrier that translates them into the eternal dimension, which is the abode of Yahweh or the Elohim. If they don't cross into an ambiguity barrier that translates them into the eternal dimension, all will end in uniformity or non individuality. The believer that lives by the Genesis principle of dust, entropy, will return into the existence of elementary particles or molecules to eventually re enter into combination with other entities of the animal or the plant kingdom. He will be entrapped in that reality. However, that reality is a dynamical one that opens up on a situation similar to the wheel of life. His shadow matter component will rejoin the universal pool of WIMPs or axions that form 86% of the mass of the cosmos and will re enter into combination as soul. There will be no recollection of former life in that parallel universe. Such was the belief of men like Abraham and Jacob, and their dealing with God revolved around blessings in the present life and multiple offspring to perpetuate self. This is so if we restrain our imagination to the data given by scriptures and Genesis, as any other sources from mystic societies remain suspect. Thus, for Abraham and Jacob, a post-mortem abode does not exist. They only believed in a post-mortem state, which was that of dust. Was that an evolution over the belief of the Neanderthals, who buried their dead with food, offerings, alls, and scrapers? Is it progress over the visions of men who lived 30 or 20,000 years ago, who left us the beautiful painting Alasco and buried their dead also with food, tools, weapons, and ornaments? This is not progress per se, this is a choice. That choice can be overridden only by the imminent dimension. The Neolithic men who lived between 7,000 to 3,000 BCE had more elaborate burial ceremonies. In the Sahara, which was not des- desertic, then they created civilizations that would eventually provide the cultures of Egypt and the Bantu. Desertic, yeah, okay. They left us in different areas of the world, dolmen, menhirs, and cromlechs. Yo, I don't know what none of these three words mean. What the hell? Okay, where we at? Right. In England, Stonehenge remains a tourist attraction. We do not know the exact meaning or function of these stones, although it is assumed that they were placed there to prevent ghosts from returning to haunt the living, or to prevent animal scavengers from digging the graves to eat the corpses. Thus, the men of prehistory, like the men of ancient Egypt, believed in the survival of a soul or of many souls, three or four in a composite individual. Notions evolved progressively in the pages of the Old Testament and in that of the New Testament. From prehistory to modern times, many people have lived in the fear of ghosts. For some theologians, that fear is nothing but an antiquated superstition, because they never had the chance to get a close encounter with the denizen of the alternate realities. They are lingering comfortably in their ivory tower, and they label those space time manifestations as animism or dynamism. At any rate, the prehistoric men and the 20th century men who have had an interaction with shadow matter reality have a sophisticated way of dealing with axionic entities. The Aborigines of Southeast Asia, the Dieri, place the spirits of the dead in the river of the sky, which is our Milky Way. This is a safe abode, far away as far as the living and concerned are concerned, because the souls can sometimes leave it to visit people on earth within limits allowed by the constraints. In the evolution of the Greek afterlife, with the mystery religions of Eleusis, Dionysus, or Orphism, new features emerged with notions of guilt and punishment, merit and reward. Thus, they come to recognize the importance of good morality as a condition of attaining a blessed state. The teachings of the Orphics and that of Pythagoras, who was schooled by the Egyptians, influenced Plato, who in the Phaedo taught the transmigration of souls. The ordinary human beings that are neither remarkable by their virtue or their vice will be confined after death in a subaquatic wait. The ordinary human beings that are neither remarkable by their virtue or their vice will be confined after death in a subaquatic abode under a lake or the river Acheron until they reach a state of purification, and then they will be recycled as living beings. There exists also in these doctrines the idea of being born of water and of the Spirit transmitted to us in the New Testament. A fear of the dead was also prevalent in the Greek imagination. In their mental construct, dead souls were neither benevolent or malevolent, but they could disturb and irritate living human beings on the account that they did not have anything better to do. In their shadowy existence, they did not have determination or motivation to either help or develop ingenious plots to harm the living. Ingenuous, not ingenious, ingenuous. However, exception was made in case of wrongful death, when the deceased sought revenge upon the perpetrator. In that sense, the ancient Greeks shared the same fear that we have seen in the Neolithic men, the Aborigines of our time, the African Haitians, and in modern Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. The same fear is present in Hinduism and its variants. In the Christian world, the covering of the casket with a white cloth on entering the church, the sprinkling of blessed water, the burning of incense, and prayers such as Requiem and Pace, recited on the occasion, are rituals to keep the spirit of the dead away from the living. Modern men still believe that the deceased has a nostalgia for places with which it was familiar and has a propensity to haunt these places. In contemporary times, civilized Westerners have become very sporty with ghosts and have created a festival of the dead, or Halloween, which is an occasion for great fun with costumes and mischief. Besides the shadowy reality of Hades or Sheol, the human mind has also created some very interesting places where the deceased can really have a good time. We have labeled them paradises. In Plato's time, the common people, or non initiates, had conceived of a paradise of erotic fantasy. The philosopher in the Republic mentions it as a vulgar and simplistic concept of the blissful afterlife in which the departed ones lie on couches crowned with garlands and drinking alcoholic nectar or elixir. He discarded that as a ridiculous representation of immortality and drunkenness. Far from the far wait, far from the far east. From the far east came superbly erected abodes of the deceased, where he can indulge in erotic bliss. The Vedas reveal that the drinking of soma, a drug with psychedelic properties, contributes to the attainment of perpetual erotic ecstasy. Also of Vedic origin is the ritual coitus, maithuna, as part of temple worship. This was a foretaste of the erotic bliss to come in the alternate reality of the dead. The Bible mentions temple prostitution, common in the pagan temples all over the Mediterranean region, including Palestine. It is important to recall here that before the arrival of the Israelites in the Promised Land, it was the country of the Phoenicians and the Philistines. Those early inhabitants of Palestine, Israel today, worshipped Astarte, Isis, and others like Aphrodite or Venus, who provided to men in their temples seductive, gorgeous women as ritual prostitutes. Evolution from the Vedic utilitarian, sensual, physical currency in post mortem alternate reality will bring forth Buddhism, Jainism, and their variants. The aim of the latter two is to escape space time altogether in afterlife existence. Buddhism is attainment of nirvana, or release from the wheel of life, hence freedom from all desires. But the Buddhist is still part of Brahman Atman, the universal soul, the space time soul. In Jainism, the liberation is total escape from space time into a realm of bliss, the Asat Prag, Praghara, that is located somehow at the top of the universe. That reality reminds us of the eternal dimension, the immanent dimension of Yahweh that has no beginning and no end. Entering into that realm would be the end of all desires, transformations, and sufferings. However, this is the toughest road to salvation ever created by the human mind, and those who follow it are stuck forever with an impossible task, as their failures keep sending them back into the wheel of life in a space time continuum. The paradises of Christian mental constructs do not have the variegated physical currency seen in pagan subjectivity. And of course, there is no erotic bliss. No wonder many people in past centuries were like Lloyd George, the British statesman, more terrified of heaven than of hell, because they were presented with an outlook of singing eternal hallelujahs in heaven. For the British Prime Minister, who was supposed to be phlegmatic, the perspective of attending an everlasting church service in a temple with every pearly gate closed and guarded by flaming seraphim to prevent loitering on the outside was a dreaded situation. I must concur, right? The outlook would be more interesting if one were introduced into an African American church service where soul music, with clapping of hands, vigorous amens, and body rhythms, can keep your spirit on the go. This would be the kind of paradise a good soul brother like King David would enjoy. Scriptures, in fact, tell us that the good king, on recovering the ark of the Lord, grit with a linen apron, came dancing before the Lord with abandon. His Victorian type wife raised with aristocratic manner. Michal was outraged by David's behavior. 2 Samuel 6:20 reads, "How the king of Israel has honored himself today, exposing himself to the view of the slave girls of his followers, as a commoner might do." David replied in 2 Samuel 6:22, "Not only will I make merry before the Lord, but I will demean myself even more. I will be lowly in your esteem, but in the esteem of the slave girls you spoke of, I will be honored." It seems that God himself can enjoy not only Baroque and classical music, but also a good vibe from rock and roll. The religion issued from the Book of Mormon offers a very interesting paradise to his adepts. They are not deprived of sexual activity or erotic bliss. The men have their harems like David and Solomon. They are able to enjoy the polygamic bliss that Western governments have robbed them of. However, women that come from a polyandric culture will be coerced to have only one man for all eternity. In the 17th century and in the age of reason, the spiritually minded Westerners could not accept the incoherent images of postmortem reality presented by the official Christendom. Individuals like Emanuel Swedenborg, a Swedish mathematician, scientist, and metaphysician, 1688 to 1722, came up with a better abstraction of afterlife in his book Heaven and Hell, published in 1758. For him, the Christian postmortem alternate reality is a fuller life than the current one, but not essentially different. There would be no cessation of activity, no boredom and hallelujah chorus, but engagement in energetic activity inspired by the love of God, who has endowed us with power of creativity. The Apostle Paul seems to have had a glimpse of this other dimension when he said that he was snatched up to the third heaven, to paradise, where he heard words which cannot be uttered, words which no man may speak. Second Corinthians 12, 1-4. As we have seen in chapter 3, the Voodoo afterlife reality offers at least three variants. The quantum process of the Dahomean mental construct has actualized the postmortem abode in the close proximity to our ordinary reality in the dark matter parallel universe. It has convergent soul zones in the air, above the earth, or below the earth in subterranean or subaquatic habitats. After crossing many rivers named Azile, Gudu, and Selu, the Semedo or Gros Bonange arrived at a valley of pyramids where reign of Towiyo, a founder of clan, and a cohort of greater Voduns and lesser Voduns. The newcomers and the non-deified Semedo occupy the last steps of the pyramids. The subjectivity of the Bakongo has actualized a similar parallel netherworld. The Moyo Gros Bonange, after its wandering, enters a subaquatic world named Kumasa. This underwater habitat is a replica of the world of the living, with cities, villages, farms, houses, roads, and diverse types of social stations or wealth. In another variant of the Dahomean postmortem abode, as described by Dorsainville, the Semedo has to appear before a judgment seat, and the outcome depends on karmic principle. Like in the Egyptian construct, after a long journey, the soul would reach the blissful kingdom of Osiris before of Osiris. Before introduction to it, the heart of the deceased is weighed against an ostrich feather in the hall of Maat. The light-hearted Semedo will be admitted in Osiris' paradise, and the heavy-hearted ones will be devoured by a fierce monster or punished by a fiery furnace. The punishment, unlike the Christian hell, is of a limited duration. In the Dahomean variant, the blameless soul goes to the Kutume, or abode of the dead, where they share the blissful life of Mau the Creator. The wicked souls are sent back to earth in a lowly station, such as the body of an animal, in a manner that reminds us of the samsaric wheel of life of Hinduism. Through, through metempsychosis, through metempsychosis, metempsychosis, the Semedo has the opportunity to reach perfection and to enter moksha or nirvana. It is important to realize that the kutume is not the other dimension of Yahweh, in spite of the fact that Mawu is conceived as the creator. Mawu is not the immanent principle. He is creator in the parallel shadow matter universe in the manner of Ra, the Egyptian demiurge, the primordial god, being the androgynous Nanabuluku. The African and Haitian visions of afterlife are not similar with the postmortem abode of the major monotheistic religions. They are compartments of the parallel reality, alternate reality to which the voodooist is already familiar. They are right there in the same space time of their everyday life. However, it is a world dominated by the nostalgia of the sensible, visible world, and as such is seeking currency and physicality in the world of the living. The Semedo, like the Egyptian Ba, retains hunger for food, drink, sex, music, dances, and other physical needs and desires. The people of the Valley of the Nile believed that the Ba returns from time to time to haunt the body in search of sensible satisfaction. Hence, the practice of providing food, drink, and other comforts in the tomb. Passageways were also constructed to allow free ingress or egress of the souls in the tomb. At death, the Selido, second soul, like the Egyptian Ka, soars directly to Mau or Nanabuluku. In Vodou worldview, the Selido does not return to visit the world of the living. However, the Egyptian counterpart Ka, in the Egyptian counterpart Ka, there was a tendency to revisit the tomb by entering into a composite state with a replica of the person placed in the tomb. In that superposition state, it can contemplate and enjoy Ba's reliefs depicting glorious moments in the life of the deceased. Egyptians adamantly believed that the preservation of the body was essential for a blissful afterlife. Thus, they proceeded to invent complex methods of mummification. In Vodouism, the same result is obtained through conservation of pieces of nails and hair from the initiate in jar, called zin. To those material pieces of the individual, a parcel or fractal portion of the semedo is attached, and from time to time, and and from time to time, the spirits in the zin or govi are rekindled, revived, no, revivified. It's a good word. Revivified, revivified, revivified by fire or ceremony of boule zin. Thus, in voodoo mental construct, exposition to fire after death is not a punishment like in the hell of the monotheistic religions. Of the Thus, in voodoo mental construct, Exposition to fire after death is not a punishment like in the hell of the monotheistic religious, but a means of energizing the soul to counterpart the effect of entropy. Wow. Energize, not punish. That is powerful. To counteract the effect of entropy. What's entropy? Let me get a proper definition of that term so I can understand what is being said here. A thermodynamic quantity representing the unavailability of a system's thermal energy for conversion into mechanical work, often interpreted as the degree of disorder or randomness. Hmm. Unavailability of a system's thermal energy. So a system lacks thermal energy in order to convert for conversion into mechanical work. Right. So maybe it's lacking in some kind of energy. So you introduce fire as a means of energizing that soul. Right. Wow, that's powerful. Entropy is the Gordian knot in the post-mortem reality of the Vodou Covenanters. It is a dreaded state or situation for the surviving Semido. It is degradation of the shadow matter into a uniform background panpsychism. It is a reduction to the universal pool of dark matter of the cosmos, where the soul loses individuality, personhood, and free will. This is like being a big nothing. And the only means known by the voodoo covenanters to counteract the disappearance into nothingness are the rituals. Even the fabulous abodes of Nanguiné, Ife, and Villeaucan would disappear into oblivion if no one from the ordinary organic reality was busy giving them actualization and currency through mental construct and rituals. Hmm. Through actual giving them actualization and currency through mental construct. Interesting. In that manner, Vodou revealed itself a utilitarian religion. The adepts, the loas, the souls are vying to maintain the status quo of physicality in the sensible world. The nostalgia for the world of the living is very strong in their alternate reality and explains the fear of the deceased shared by the voodooists. Rituals are performed to keep them away from the home of the surviving relatives, to restrain them in Sheol until the time when they will be allowed to come back home as a tutelary voodoo. The degradation into an impersonal panpsychic background is also present in the mental construct of the Sora, a jungle tribe in eastern India. That tribe's beliefs are still in the Vedic stage, and they share many similarities with the African Haitian alternate reality. The abode of the dead is a next door parallel universe, and the soul of the living shaman, very often a woman, can travel to that other dimension when she is in trance. Likewise, the spirits of departed people can visit the world of the living through channeling or possession of the shaman. The existence of the departed souls as person depends on their interactions with the living. The period of mourning gives currency to their existence, as through the shaman they can maintain dialogue with the surviving family or relatives. They are feared by the people because their severed attachment can make them dangerous to the loved ones. Palliative rituals and sacrifices, like the Haitian mangue, les morts, food for the dead, are performed in this respect. This is bartering between the dead and the living. However, after many years, the deceased undergo a second death, the final entropic death, as dialogue or communication with the living ceases. There is no ritual like the Boule Zin to rekindle their axionic reality. In the mental construct of the Sora, the dead enter a phase of butterfly, which is the equivalent of equilibrium in the universal panpsychic field. The axionic souls become characterless and not amenable to dialogue. The state of affairs creates a tyranny of covenants or bondage for the adepts of the Vodou faith. The devotees live in fear of retaliation on the part of the deceased if services and rituals are not performed on schedule and the proper way. Everything in life is explained by the interactions between the spirits, souls, or Loa and the Vodouists, there exist barely any natural diseases or accidents. The days of the week are divided into good omen and ill omen, and people lose opportunities that way because they cannot enter into deals in that particular day as dictated by their covenants with the spirits. The entities are everywhere in the houses, in the trees, in the ground, in the rivers, lakes, ponds, and in the rain, the winds, in the harvest, in the night, at the crossroads, in the cemeteries, in the churches, and in the home force. And particularly, every tree is a repository for some kind of entity. Spirits or shadow entities have more to gain in the deals with the living being than voodoo is received from them. Shadow or spirit entities have more to gain in deals with the living, than voodoo is received from them. Through the mediacy of the adepts, the spirits have access to the physical ordinary reality with its enjoyments. We are not denying their beneficial involvement. They do intervene against other voodoos, baka, or zombies, or other ordinary enemies. They can sometimes produce healing, foretell some events, and produce some wonders like the Zandoric singularities. However, the boundary constraints exposed in the previous chapters limit their power and their efficacy. Their failure to protect Bookman, Dessalines, and other heroes that have covenant with them illustrates their sporadic intervention and their limitation. Their aim is primarily their own satisfaction in the sensible world. The service lower is an opportunity for them to journey in and to enjoy multiple parallel universes through adorcism and possession and through theophanic materialization. If they could repeat the feat of the rebellious principalities that produced the Nephilim of Genesis 6, they would have gained access to the quasi permanent form of physicality. But due to boundary constraints imposed by the immanent dimension, they are obliged to live with the amplitude offered by the composite state of adorcism. The covenant with the spirits at times imposes a heavy yoke upon the adept. In the early church, becoming a Christian was a dangerous decision, one that called for negation of self and a willingness to accept persecution or even martyrdom. In Hinduism, the stage of forest dweller and that of ascetic life calls for separation from loved ones, family, friends, or comfortable living. The voodoo connection did not change from prehistoric times to present day civilization. Being primarily interested in participating in the physicality of the sensible world, the shadow matter entities, Semedo, and others don't care if we live in the opulence of Nebuchadnezzar, the glory of Greece and Rome, the electronics wizardry of the 20th century, or the disease ridden, poverty stricken areas of the world. Haiti, being one of the poorest nations in the Western Hemisphere, its inhabitants find it very difficult at times to comply with the demands of rituals. This can lead to distressful situations that can cause major anxiety, phobias, and depression. That mental distress can induce metabolic derangements, impairments in the immune system with serious consequences, attributed to the spirits by the adepts. Haiti, Africa, and many other parts around the world where people maintain the currency of alternate parallel universes by their mental construct that their subjectivity are ideal places for vaudoons or other shadow matter entities. Our subjectivity maintains their objectivity. Even in Haiti, some vaudoons have fallen into oblivion or inexistence because of neglect or ignorance of their reality by adepts. Such is the case of Miss or Mademoiselle Charlotte, a vaudou of European ancestry who speaks perfect French according to Milo Rigor. When in composite state with that entity, the voodoo is educated or non-educated, rural, homey, or sophisticated, uses the language of a Sorbonnard. Miss Charlotte, or rather Lady Charlotte, despise her her punctiliousness in the matter of etiquette, likes to drop in when not invited, particularly in Radha ceremony. This might be a way to counteract dissipation. She liked soft drinks, sweet, non alcoholic liquors. colorfully presented in pink, blue, or white. However, as a typical Janus type, Janus figure, she will not refuse a good glass of clarin alcohol, exhibiting in that manner a petrocide. Furthermore, she is very difficult to work with as she is very prejudiced and stuck up. These characteristics will lead eventually to her oblivion in limbo. Such has been the fate of another European Loa, a masculine entity named Din Clinsin, who speaks absolutely correct French. He belongs to the Pantheon Rada, but exhibits as well some petro features. He accepts rum, tafia, and clarin, but he does not drink them. He pours them in his pockets, and as he does so, the liquid becomes progressively invisible. Because of his degradation into the entropic uniformity, it is very difficult to make him manifest in composite state. Thus, the afterlife survival of a soul depends to a large extent on the actions of the living beings on this side of existence. And an ultimate parad- paradisiacal. Man, what in the paradisiacal? How do you pronounce that word? Let me get that. Let me get a pronunciation. State, an ultimate, whatever state, state should be able to stand by itself in full splendor, bliss, and rapturous ecstasy. It should not depend on a whimsical mentality like ours. There must be a way to get out of this precarious reality created by the human beings and their Semitic counterparts. Their covenants are not helping the country at large for nearly 200 years of independence. The assumption is fallacious that Haiti has remained the poorest nation in the Western Hemisphere in the 20th century. It is one of the richest in the 19th century. It was one of the richest in the 19th century, right? So the assumption is fallacious that Haiti has remained the poorest nation in the Western Hemisphere in the 20th century because of the absence of a national recognition of the Vaudoons, who have been called upon at the beginning of the independence war. Religion may play a role in any development, but it is not the sine qua non. The Israelites who knew the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, who were kept in slavery for 400 years in Egypt, or at least 200 years by other reckoning. When they enter Palestine, after 40 years of civic and religious preparation in the desert, they had to turn to the Phoenicians of their descendants in Syria for technology. Rome, in becoming Christian, was overrun by the barbarians or ancestors of modern Western Europeans. The religion of the Hindus and its offshoots do not encourage Western development. Thus, we are not sure that the erection of a national shrine or Hunfor to the Vodou pantheons and the recognition of Vodou as a legitimate national religion will enhance our chance of development or prosperity. The Vodou choice of afterlife realm has no prospect beyond space-time. The Vodouists opt to remain in the continuance of visible and invisible sides of space-time. When alive, they are locked into a symbiotic arrangement with the spirits and spend a great deal of time, effort and money to nurture the disincarnate reality. When dead, a dynamic existence is obtained through the rituals or services of the living. They depend largely or uniquely on the living to obtain physical currency or amplitude of their wave function through modulation by rituals. This is a precarious existence, an existence that can be wiped out by modernization and economic progress, leading to a materialistic and reductionist rationalism. Salvation in Vodouism is attainment of Loa status. It is really paradoxical that the power of intermediate angels, Vaudoons, or Loa depends on energy furnished by human beings. The power of ministering angels or spiritual entities to help terrestrials should have come from the immanent existence, from God Himself. But in Vodouism, God is only asked to give permission to make a deal, to open a service, to perform an operation with or against entities. The interaction with God is only a formality, a protocol. This is so because God is distant, hidden God, is a distant, hidden God like the God of the Old Testament. Most of the words, gestures, sounds, rhythms, sacrifices, holocausts, preparations of lamps, baths, drink, and food produced in Vodou ceremony contribute to increasing the force field of the wave particles that compose the shadow matter souls of Vodous. One of the magnificent ceremonies described by Odette Menesson Rigaud, a mambo of Haitian bourgeoisie or upper class in Malo Rigaud's monumental book La Tradition Vaudou et la Vaudou Haitienne, under the name Boulezine, Rada ritual style, is done primarily to warm up the mysteries, to increase the power that will be used later on for the benefit of the covenanters. That ceremony is performed every year in some jurisdictions, or every 3 years, 5 or 7 years in some other localities. However, in the northern part of Haiti, it is completely ignored, as they can warm up the Vodouns by other means. The power of the drum beats and rhythms in inducing the trance state cannot be ignored. For Westerners not familiar with the African Haitian repertoire of music, American rock and roll and hard rock can give an inkling of the powerful vibrations and rhythms that overwhelm the participants. The drum beats elicit a high vibratory state that can lead to a cascade of equations conceived by the GUT of modern physicists. How can the actions of the adepts on the visible material world affect the power or energy of the entities in the invisible world? How can the spirits or the Loa share the food and the drink offered during a service, when most of the times these offerings appear intact to the naked eyes, except in the Ding Clean Sins singularity of disappearing alcoholic beverages, and are consumed afterwards by the adepts, or buried in a hole, or thrown at sea, or in a river. In trying to understand the reality beyond the ritual, behind the rituals, we have to recall that for the Vodouist, or in the African Haitian worldview, everything in the universe shares a psychic field, the pan-psychic field of Einstein connection, which is the psychionic property of every particle or wave function. They also believe in the existence of an axionic shadow matter double in everything: plants, animals, stones, waters, planets, sun, stars, and galaxies. This aspect of their vision of the universe is what constitutes animism. This animism should not be confused with the concept of repository, by which a Semitic entity or a Loa dwells into a tree, or rock, or a place. In that sense, every tree in the land is an arbre reposoir, arbre reposoir, man, of a Vodou or a spirit. A song is more than just a melody. The words and sounds are psychic and axionic expressions that have the ability to create high energy state, high vibratory state that can increase the power of a soul or a loa. In our ordinary reality, music in itself has the ability of inducing different levels of mind alterations, from mild elation, bliss, and ecstasy to rapturous frenzy, agitation, madness, vigor, or somnolence, sleep, and heavy trance. All types of music, from the slow and monotonous rhythms of adagio, andante, largo, scherzo, from the elegiac and romantic to the trepidation of the allegro, allegretto, and its variants, vivace or vivace, I don't know how you say that, animato, agitato, marcial, prestissimo, from the pianissimo to the fortissimo, from the simple instrument, flute, piano, there we go, violin, to a full-blown symphonic orchestra, from the gallop of a rock and roll and the twist to the pompous, grave, martial, or gorgeous expressions of the Baroque. are capable of creating a whirling of energy, a maelstrom that places the individual on the threshold of singularities. Malido Asome, in his African experience, testifies of the power of the drum in ritual. The drum is more than rhythm, tempo, and cadence. It is a transportation device. It carries the adepts into other worlds, the world of the spirits, by facilitating edotism and naked singularities. Furthermore, the sounds of the drum cancel the boundary constraints imposed by lights on the Kontomon, spirits or Voduns. Bright lights dispel the spirits with the drum beats, while the drum beats attract them. According to Michael Harner in his article, A Different Drummer, the monotonous beats coming in a frequency of 4 to 7 per second could break the ambiguity barrier and open the doorway to the alternate reality. It happens that the sonic driving is approximately in the same frequency range as that of the brain's theta waves. The Australian aborigines, um, among other things, use drumming to travel from ordinary reality to other parallel universes, or to penetrate into the vortex or wormhole that lies between the cracks of space time. Drumming induces an alternate state of consciousness that triggers the cascade of equations leading to singularities such as metamorphosis and transmutation, where one becomes whatever the mind is focused on, or the acquisition of spontaneous knowledge. There are accounts of aborigines who physically appear and disappear as they travel back and forth from one space time continuum to another one. Wow. The various African rhythms, Yambalu, Mahi, Nago, Ibo, Congo, Krabini, Kita, Banda, Petro, Kaflao, aided by the powerful vibrations of the drums, create an increased vibratory state at all levels, atomic, subatomic, molecular, and energetic, including the four forces of nature: electromagnetics, strong force, work force, weak force, gravity, of the composition of visible and invisible matter that form individuals and voduns. Through their increase in power, the Huga or the Mambo can modulate the reality of the Loa and the souls. The other ingredients used as offerings or media of rituals, such as incense, perfumes, colors, foods, drinks, symbols like vive, kwasinye, packets, and kisi, carry the same energy field that can influence or modulate the voodoos of the soul or the souls of the deceased. By entering into a composite state with the offerings, the souls, the drum beats, the songs, the drum beats, the axionic entities can increase their energy state, their vibratory state that can lead to material or physical currency. The ritual as a whole produces a maelstrom of energy that swirls into a vortex of high vibratory or supergravity like state that produces singularities of one form or another. This is a very precarious state of affairs. Like any other religion that places their afterlife abode in the space-time continuum, Vodou creates a realm that is subjected to entropy, the transiency of the wave particle diagram, and dependency on the whims of human psyche, disposition or predisposition. The Vodou post-mortem world is dependent for its existence in full force upon the memory, the feeling, the love, the respect, the responsibility of the surviving offspring, relatives, the college of Hugar, Mambo, Hunsi, another Petit Kai. The soul of the departed ones can be captured by bokors, imprisoned by them, tortured by specific rituals used in the formation of Inkisi or Wanga, and used as demons for possession in the nefarious operation called Voyemor. The souls can be abused by other more powerful Chonian entities, the Apollyon or Abaddon, type of principalities that draw the energies from their existence from other powerful sources. Eventually, they will be recycled into the wheel of space time, either as part of the universal pool of dark matter or as a shadow clone in the mineral, vegetable, or animal kingdoms. As such, we can see that the soul is in need of liberation, either moksha or nirvana type, or better, a translation from space time to immanent eternal dimension of Yahweh. For this, a transcendental evolution must take place in the tenets of the Vodou faith. An initiation to a higher order must be obtained.